I was constantly looking for a place where I felt at peace, content, not threatened, and fulfilled.
Make it work. Long before Tim Gunn had a catchphrase, he was a celebrated academic in the world of fashion. Tim has held faculty roles at some of the most prestigious design schools in the country, including the Corcoran College in DC and Parsons here in New York. But before he got these jobs, Tim was no model student. In fact, he was far from it. Tune in to hear Tim talk about his own college days, transferring between schools and his many interests. It ultimately made him the perfect candidate for his first job, and years later as the Uber mentor on Project Runway. So after high school, you enrolled in Washington's Corcoran School of Art and Design.
Well,
No?
I did eventually, but there were a lot of colleges in between. Yeah, when I was at schools for a semester, and that was it, and was this rolling stone. I was constantly looking for a place where I felt at peace, content, not threatened, and fulfilled.
And that seemed to happen at Corcoran.
Oh my God, it was a whole new threshold for me.
You
It was
were surrounded
extraordinary.
by creative people and found that you actually had a creative gene in you.
And actually, one of the one-semester stints in college was a semester studying architecture, which I had a passion for most of my life. In fact, my mother would recall frequently, I don't know why it stuck with her so profoundly, but it did. She would talk about visiting Monticello, Jefferson's home in Charlottesville, when I was 9 years old, and how I took my allowance money to buy a book of Thomas Jefferson's architectural plans, which I actually still have. And she said, this is a kid who's really driven by this. But when I was studying architecture, it was in the olden days, and you had to drop India ink into a stylus and pull it along a straight edge, and if the ink bled, which invariably it did, you had to start all over again. So it drove me bananas, and I thought, you know, even if I get through this program with a B arch or an M arch, I'm going to end up doing wiring and plumbing specs for gas stations. I wanted to be Frank Lloyd Wright.
Well, that was a good one to want to be.
Yeah, but things happen for a reason.
They absolutely do. You received a BFA from Corcoran in 1976 and set up a sculpture studio.
With Molly Van Nice, yes, the person I mentioned about with the psychic.
Working with paper and illustration board. Describe what those works were like.
Well, they were very architectural, but not literally, and they were fairly small scale. There were two artists who had a huge influence on me. One was Joseph Cornell, whose work was very narrative, and mine was not visually narrative, but there were narratives behind what I was doing. And the other artist was someone who ended up being a very important mentor to me, an artist, a sculptor by the name of Ann Truitt, who passed a few years ago and recently had a retrospective at the Hirshhorn Museum in Washington.
Nice. Do you still have any of the work you did from that period?
I've never told this story either. I have one, and it is in a brown paper grocery store bag, which shows you how long ago it's been in this bag, in the top of one of my closets.
Why don't you take it out of the closet?
I don't think it wants to come out. Maybe I will one day.
Oh, I think it deserves to get a little fresh air.
Well, if we ever have a conversation again here, I'll bring it right. I'll put it right there.
We'll schedule that.
Okay.
Okay, so tell us about what I think then was your first job. Was at Corcoran in the admissions office?
No, it was actually, I ended up there eventually. That's actually a funny story too. But no, it was first was assistant teaching to a wonderful teacher of mine named Rona Slade for a summer school program. And
at that school?
At that school. And then the following September, she invited me to come back and teach three-dimensional design, which I taught for years.
Okay.
And then about 2 years after that, the admissions director at the Corcoran left on maternity leave. And it was as though no one ever expected her to leave. I mean, unlike my grandmother, we could see that she was pregnant. So they said, would you take over her responsibilities? And I said, well, I went to Rona first, just ask, may I do this? And she said, sure. So I literally walked into an empty office and drawers that had nothing in them. And I had to just invent things based on my own admissions experiences. And I was grateful that I'd applied and been to so many schools. I had a lot of experience.
See, it all somehow connects and works in your favor.